What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sports Spectrum. I'm your host, Matt Forte, here with Jason Romano. And Jason, we got on the podcast today, coach of SMU football team, head coach, Coach Rhett Lashlee. Coach, I want to start with you personally because you've been on Sports Spectrum before, I think back in 2021, 22 maybe.
Yeah.
And I guess when you hear coach, I know from my perspective as a player, as a former player, when you hear coach, that's kind of an identity, a coach. I want to know, as you speak to our listeners, how do you remove yourself from that? Not that you want to remove yourself, but how do don't get wrapped up in that coaching being your only identity?
Man, that's a great question. I've said before that coaching is what I do. It's not who I am. And so, but man, it's like anything else. We can get really wrapped up in what we're doing, and that can pretty quickly, without us even knowing it, become our identity or become, more than it needs to be. I think there's a couple ways. One, my family helps keep that all in perspective. My family's without question my why and what's important to me. I get to do a job that hopefully has impact on a lot of young men and even staffers, men and women that work here over time. But there's nobody that I feel like I'm more called and responsible for mentoring and leading than my four kids, with my wife. And so that's where it starts. And they help me keep that in perspective, I think, because you can lose a game and, in football, when you win, it's great. When you lose, it's really bad. There's not a whole lot in between. And you can lose a game and go home, and within 10 minutes, my kids can take me away from that space that I'm in where the world is over right now in the short term because I'm a coach and we lost, you know what I mean? And just kind of recenter my perspective a little bit. My wife is awesome, so she helps keep that grounded too. But I just think you have to understand our identities in Christ. And he's the one who's given me the ability to be a coach, given us all the ability to be here and impact our staff and our players and keep that in perspective. If they took coaching away from me tomorrow, I feel like God still has something for me to do on this earth as long as he keeps me here. But right now I do feel like coaching is my calling more than my identity. And I just feel like I'm called to coach. And, a lot of times we may not see the impact we're having on the young men that we're with in the short term, but that's not our job. Our job is to be faithful, and then God's going to take it and grow it and do with it what he wants to.
Yeah, that's so good, Coach. And I love what you said. Like, there's no moral victories in football. It's the one sport too. I mean, a lot of different sports probably feel this way, but especially in football, there's no in between. It's like you lose, it's really bad. You win, it's awesome. And there has to be some kind of balance in between that because when, as you said, when you get home, I remember playing in the league too. Between Tulane and playing with the Bears, I lost a lot of games. Back in those days.
Tulane's winning a lot of games now.
Yeah. Now I wish I was there now, but when Jason invents the time machine, then we'll go back. But
that's right.
There has to be some kind of balance because it's easy to say, as I experienced when I got home and I saw my kids and my wife's smiling face, and even if we got destroyed, it didn't hurt that bad. It didn't matter so much. The game was not as big as life is, but it could lead to some sort of kind of, if you go too far into that, where it's like, where do you have your competitive edge, so to speak? So how do you balance that as a coach? And I would say it would be similar with a player too. How do you balance that of saying, yeah, this isn't the end of the world, but not being so cynical that it was like, yeah, we lost again.
Yeah.
That becomes an attitude. That becomes a culture, if you will, for a team.
I agree. It's a great question and way to look at it. I mean, look, I think it starts with Jesus was the ultimate and is the ultimate competitor. And so we're called to model ourselves after him. And also, we're called to whatever we're doing to do it to the best of our ability. So yeah, if you're not a competitor and you're okay with losing or failure, you're not going to make it very long in our sport and our business. So I think it's a great opportunity once we've established, like your first question, that we have the proper perspective that this is important, it's a big deal, it's where God has us, we want to be great and do well in it, but it's not where our identity lies. Then you come to the next phase of God a lot of times can help use us and meet people where they are. And so whether it's people on my staff that do find their identity in being a coach or director of recruiting or whatever that may be, or definitely our players who, in this day and age where everything's on social media and NIL and all these things, like it's even harder than it was when you and I were back playing to not find your identity in what you are, because that's pretty much what the world tells you. And so we get a chance to meet them in those moments. And you said the word culture. So we have to create a culture that is about winning and is about excellence and is about being competitive. But the end result doesn't always just show whether we were successful or not. And so, in our failures or tough times, that's when we can be there for our players, both as coaches, but also as godly men, to try to hopefully instill the things that are going to carry them when they have a family someday and they go through tough times. That's a great opportunity for us to meet them where they are in that moment, help us remind them that their identity is not in being a quarterback or a running back, et cetera. And that God can use the struggles, for good. And whether it's on the field, whether it's what's going on in their life, academics, team, all those things. And if your culture is built solely on winning, and that's it, even though that's the number one goal in what I do and what we do, then when you lose a few games, you're going to crumble. And so, our culture has to be built on relationships and people, and it has to be built on the intangibles that give us a standard that we define internally of who we are, that we want to continue to chase. And sometimes we're reaching that and sometimes we aren't, but no matter what, we keep chasing that. And for us here, we hope that culture is a Christ-centered culture.
Yeah, I want to ask how hard that is, because you played college football, around the same time that I was playing too. And it's a much different game now. And as I got to become a professional athlete, it actually, college and pros are coming more and more alike. The kind of the experience, I would say, ton of turnover, way more turnover in college than there was before, which presents a challenge, I would say, as a coach, because I know in the NFL it's definitely a challenge to be able to coach the player and the character and the person, because not just because these are grown men, but because there's so much turnover. So in discipleship, that takes time. So what are the challenges that you've seen, and what ways have you been successful? What things have worked in a system that is becoming more pro like?
Yeah. Well, first, we need to clarify for everybody. I did play college football. You excelled at college football. There's a little difference there. But it's harder. People ask me, my wife's asked me before, friends, people, hey, do you want to coach in the NFL? Well, first of all, no one's asked me to. So, but I've always said no. And it's not because I love the NFL. I've always loved the fact that you can mentor and grow and lead and develop young men, not just football players in college. And I'm not saying you can't do that in the NFL. I'm sure you can, but as you know better than I do, it's a business. It's totally different. And to your point, it's getting harder in what we do because we've introduced a lot of professional things to our game without the same parameters that the pros have. Like, they at least have rules in the league. And right now we have really no guardrails on anything. And so we really aren't an amateur sport anymore, but we're not a true professional sport. We kind of have an identity crisis with that, but it makes it harder because, you normally got used to a kid shows up, and I've got 3 or 4 years to not only develop the football player, but help develop the man.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit with moms and dads and say, look, we're going to help your son be the best football player they can be. If they want to play in the NFL, that's great. We want all these things, but we want a degree, and we want them to develop emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, all aspects. When they leave here, coming as a young boy or man, we want them to leave as a grown man and ready for the world. We still have those desires, and that's still what we try to do, but it's harder. To your point, you may only have a kid 1 year, or you may have a kid that loves it and is a great fit, but then other components get thrown in and they leave. And so I think that's changed our game dramatically and quickly. we're all adapting on the fly. What we've tried to do here, to your question about what have we done with that, is we still try to keep the main thing the main thing. And it doesn't mean it's going to win every time, but I still believe life's about people and relationships. Our staff does. We don't have a lot of slogans, but our core values, number one, is family. Now, that's a buzzword that everybody uses. We unpack that a lot with our guys because it has to be an action. It can't just be something we say. It needs to be who we are. We work really hard at relationships with our players. And I believe our culture and some of those things is a big reason that we've won 22 games the last 2 years. We've had good players and we have good coaches and all those things, but I think that's helped a lot. And our guys are happy. They believe in what we're doing. And I think it centers on around the relational aspect. We're still relational beings. Even if money and more distractions are involved, those things matter. And sometimes that's where the decision gets made. But I know this, if you don't have a good relationship with them, it's not going to matter. And so we still try to work on that and do it the old school way, the reason we were kind of in this business to do it. So at least if nothing else, while they are with us, we've poured into them. And then it also, I think, has helped us not have the same amount of turnover.
Yeah. I am old enough to remember when SMU had got the death penalty, as they called it back then, because of they had the Pony Express and all of that. A lot of these young kids probably like, what are they talking about? But when you took, because you've been at other places, Miami before, as a coach, and UConn and Auburn, but when you got your first opportunity as at a head coaching job, did that come into play in your thought process? And secondly, the last 2 years, as you said, winning so much in his last 2 years and qualifying for the playoffs and on the heels of kind of the connotation of what SMU football was. How did you deal with the success? That's two long questions, but
Yeah.
I guess first off, did that go into your mindset when accepting the job at SMU?
You're talking about the past history going to my
Yeah.
mindset?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't, from the standpoint of I had the chance. I'd been the offensive coordinator here for 2 years before I went to Miami. So I had some insider information on Dallas and SMU more current than the past history. And I had a lot of confidence that we could build something really special here now. I do think it's always good to know that a place has been successful, even if it had fallen on hard times for 3 to 4 decades. The only way it even played anything into my mind is I just enjoy doing things that either haven't been done before or haven't been done in a long time. And so to me, I saw it as an opportunity to come to a place that at one point had been on top of the college football world and now hasn't been for, again, in my lifetime. And at the same time, I knew enough about the place since I'd been here to know the potential of, man, what could be. And it's just really fun to either do something that's never been done before, or something hadn't been done in a long time, or something that maybe people thought would never happen. And so, they call it the death penalty. And to some degree, we've been having a resurrection of our program around here. And so that it didn't play into my decision a lot, other than it may have actually aided in no, I want to go there because how fun would it be to win a championship for the first time in 40 years, to take our program back to the national stage. Now, I didn't know it all start happening in the first 3 years, but that was an exciting challenge, I thought, or an opportunity. And then regards to, handling success or the winning, I think it's a great question. Because success is hard. We've won 11 games in back-to-back years, and we don't take any of that for granted because that was hard to do. And but it's really hard to sustain success. And that's kind of the area we're getting into now is how do we continue to build something that lasts and has some consistency as our program and become what we think we can become. And there's a lot of ways I could answer that, and I'm sure people could answer it a lot better. I think there's a couple of things. I think one, you got to be humble enough to know that it isn't about you. I'm thankful that we've had the years we've had. I'm thankful that we've had, in my opinion, the favor of God on our program and on my life and those things, because I know I don't deserve it. Our pastor had a really good sermon on Sunday about godly leaders, and it was 5 bullet points. They were all excellent. But the number one is godly leaders trust in who has them, not in what they have. We trust in who has us, being creator God, not in what we have. In other words, we're not in control. And boy, that's easy to stop doing. Like you could within a week just get off course and start thinking it's all about me, or even if I don't, like I have control and I don't. So, we're going to try to continue to stay humble and not be comfortable, because what we have could be gone just like that. And it's also not because of us. God's given us the opportunities. Before every game last year, I remember thinking, because, to me, pride is the root of almost all sins.
Yeah.
And it is so in my human nature. And I think a lot of us, and especially when you start winning. Now, when you're losing, there's not a lot of room for pride because you're getting humbled. But like last year, as we were starting to get on a run, I mean, I would in the locker room and even going out on the field, like before kick, would be just saying, God, just in the day before the game, like reveal any pride in me, please. Like show it to me because I don't want it. Because I know if I have it, I'm not going to be the best version of myself. I'm not going to lead our team and staff the right way. And I'm obviously not going to represent God and give him the glory the right way. And so, but it's a daily struggle. And I think we just have to keep that in mind, that humility, that everything we have is because of God's allowing us to have our success. And we have to keep tapping into that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because it leads to my next question of, God is always teaching us. He's always teaching us something in success and in failure. It's easy to point out in failure, even though we don't like it. It's like, okay, I know what God is teaching me. But sometimes in success, the success can mask what God is really trying to show you or teach you. So in this past season, or maybe the last 2 seasons, what has God been teaching you with the success that you guys have had?
Well, aside from what I just said, really in the last month, so our church is also kind of reading through the Bible this year, more chronological. So like a month ago, we were in Joshua, and so I was reading, because I start thinking of our success and God's blessing and favor. And to your point, when things are going good, it's a lot easier to slip into that. Well, either it's because of me, or even if you're not arrogant about it, it's like, well, I can make these decisions, these small decisions. Like I got this. Like it's easy to forget. No, I need to every day be tapping in and asking God, what do you have for me? What do you want? What is your plan? So I was reading in Joshua, and I think they just, conquered a couple cities. They'd just taken out Jericho, and they were about to come to another one. And the word had spread that they were dominating everybody. So the next few villages that they were about to go conquer decided to come deceive them. They got a bunch of those leaders. They came to them and acted like they were from a faraway land, not in the village next to them. And so they had a plan to deceive them. And I was just reading, I'm like, okay, whatever. And Joshua and his people were trying to decide, they wanted him to make a treaty with him. Hey, make us a deal. You won't attack us, whatever. And Joshua, just in probably the success they had, I don't know, just a godly leader decided, I think I can make this decision. And it was like verse 14. I don't remember if it was chapter 8. It was somewhere in there. And I was just reading all, and it said, and Joshua did not inquire of the Lord. And I was like, whoa, on something small, that, or at least in the moment to him, seemed like an easy daily decision that a leader can make. He didn't inquire of the Lord. He made the treaty. It wasn't good. I'm not saying God didn't still bless him, but it didn't go well, right? Then you go, last week we're in David. I think it was in 1 Samuel. And it was another scenario where he wasn't king yet, but he was leading the army, and they came to him, and I think there were some Philistines to conquer. And someone's like, hey, let's go take them out. And David said, first, David inquired of the Lord. And then it said, yes, go attack. The Lord said, go attack. So he went to his men and said, let's go attack. And they were like, I don't know if we can. They're pretty big. And then came back and he said, again, David inquired of the Lord. So you see 2 examples of a godly leader not inquiring of the Lord, and a godly leader does, and the result. And so that's kind of hit me lately, is like, it doesn't matter if we're going into year 4 and we feel like we have a good culture and a good program, and by no means have we arrived, but we feel like we know who we are and we have a chance to continue to build on our momentum and do something special. That was God speaking to me saying, hey, don't forget daily to inquire of me, please, because I might have a different answer than what you would do on your own. So that's kind of been the thing for me lately.
No, that's good. That's good. I don't think it's ironic, but I'm reading through the Bible this year too, chronologically as well. And I've been reading through, the story of Moses and him as the leader, but then Joshua and Caleb. And it's a constant pattern of when they inquire of the Lord, he gives them the success. He says, I've given the Canaanites into your hands, or whoever
Mm.
their battle is against. And one of the things that stuck out to me was when I believe it was Joshua, and the angel of the Lord showed up, and he's like, "Hey, are you on their side or on our side?" And he's like, "Neither one of y'all. I'm on God's side." And
Yep.
it spoke volumes, because we often do that. We pick sides. It's like, well, are you the enemy, or are you on our side? We're the good guys. And really, it's the battle is the Lord's, right? So
Mm.
when we inquire of God, he's already given you that battle, or maybe it's not that time. So
Yep.
it makes sense to acknowledge God. Like Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, when we acknowledge him, that's when he makes the path straight. And all of that just connects, right?
Yep.
Jason, what you got?
That was so good. I just like listening to you guys share some Old Testament here. This is good because I just finished up in the New Testament. So
Yeah, we're born in the 80s. So, he's 83, I'm 85. So you see that Old Testament start. As you get older, you start like, I identify with that Old Testament.
I was born in the 70s, so I don't know what that makes me, but that's another story for another time. Coach,
Ancient.
I want to ask you, ancient. That's right, the ancient scriptures. Coach, I want to ask you about discipleship. It's been, you said year 4 as you're going in. The last time we had you on Sports Spectrum, you had just taken the job. I'm wondering what discipleship for you looks like on a daily, a weekly basis, in and out of season. Because in season, you're putting together game plans and there's so much going on week to week and your schedule is chaotic and crazy, but you got to stay filled up, right? So what does that look like in and out of season for you, just staying connected to Christ?
Yeah. Great question. Because we need that, going back to the Old Testament. I mean, right? Was it Moses or Aaron that Moses needed someone to help hold his arms up, right? And so,
Yep.
um, you know, for me, it's a couple things. I've got a group of guys that I don't stay with in touch weekly because we've now all moved away, but there's like a group of 4 or 5 guys. Yeah, I mean, a couple of them are college college basketball and baseball coaches, and then a couple of them one's an orthopedic, one used to be in ministry and now's into the private sector. And so just a group of 4 or 5 guys that we have a text thread, and we used to get on Zooms and just whatnot, and we kind of help keep each other accountable. We actually call ourselves the flock. Longer story. But then also like where you live, and I got to have people, because you got your staff and then you got your family. But to your point, if you're not doing a good job making sure you're healthy, then it really makes it hard to do right at home or for your staff and players. So I have a couple of really good friends locally in Dallas over the last 3 years that we've developed. One's a guy, his name's Zach Allen, and his dad's a great college coach or high school coach, here at Highland Park, and his wife's in ministry. He's been in ministry before, but he's just a buddy that we go work out in the mornings in the off season. Like we'll get up at 6 a.m. and 3 or 4 days a week. We'll sometimes 3 or 4, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on the week, right? But he'll pick me up. We'll go work out for 45 minutes and we'll come back, and then we'll grab lunch once a month or something. And just, we're each other's friends and kind of cheerleaders, but not for the reason everybody else knows us. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's just another godly man that is walking through life at the similar age and range of you, but can help pour into you or help you with blind spots. And then, as my kids are getting older, I'm learning as a parent, my friend groups are my kids' friend groups. And so
Yes.
my kids are fortunate to go to a great school, Christian school that, I've always believed your people decisions are your most important decisions, and you are who you hang around. And so they've got some great friends. They're 8th graders going into 9th grade. So now they're going into high school, and like their friend group is solid because their friends have solid parents. And there's a group of about 3 men that I've gotten to be really close with that we have similar age kids, and we'll go to breakfast and spend time together. So I think it's important. no matter who you are, that you have other godly men that can pour into you. They kind of help keep you accountable, whether it's directly or indirectly, and that you can learn from as you walk through life.
Yeah, that's really good. I think it's just so important because, Matt, we've heard this too when we talk to coaches. You empty your cup every single day, it feels like. And how do you, if you don't fill it back up, especially from a spiritual perspective, you're going to be in trouble. It's not going to end well. So,
yeah, you can't give someone what you don't have or what you don't possess anymore. And I've realized that too. Sometimes you get busy giving and doing instead of being. And I think that's what Coach Rhett has done great, is he's being what he wants his players who are coming, and his coaching staff too. I mean, because it's not just players, it's coaching staff, and with the turnover and things like that, you kind of really have to set a culture that everybody has to buy into, right?
But to y'all's point, you can't do it, one, without staying plugged into Christ. And you can't do that on your own without having an incredibly godly wife and those men, discipleship, mentors, friends, if you will, that help fill you up and keep you in the right perspective. And it has nothing to do with your identity as a coach.
Amen. Amen. Well, Coach, man, you dropped so many gems and jewels on us this podcast, and we just thank you for your time and for giving us your time on Sports Spectrum.
Well, always great to be with you. I mean, Matt, great to visit with you, and always admired you from afar. And then Jason, just love what you do with Sports Spectrum. It's making an impact, and so thanks for having me on and being a part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportspectrum.com.